All right, let's get started. Son and Jay, can one of you also let people in as they join? That would be really helpful. Welcome. It's really great to see everyone's faces tonight. My name is Karen Levin. I'm co-founder of the United Women's Ball Hockey Foundation. I've been working with them for about 5 years, which has been a really exciting part. And we're excited tonight to launch our very first community learning series. So happy to see everyone and get to learn together. Just some quick expectations for tonight. We've all been doing Zoom meetings now for a while, whether this is your first one or your 5,000th one. I just wanted to let us all know that we're stronger in community. That's one of our UW's values. We're also much stronger when we hear all voices. So just kind of read the moment, speak up and share your thinking, and then step back when appropriate to allow others to ask questions and to share their thoughts as well. We also hope that you'll be solutions oriented tonight, and you can feel free to identify like challenges that you've been having in your training. We're going to try to avoid things like I'm never able to do this, or I can't. We're going to try to say like I'm having trouble with this, but I might be able to try this. What do you think? And lastly, it's really important to ask questions. We have Nikki here, who is our expert for the evening. Ask any questions that you have. We're here to learn, and you only learn by doing things, trying, making mistakes, and then improving. Just some quick Zoom etiquette, which we're doing a great job of already. While Nikki's talking, or if we have like the full group together, just try to stay muted if you can. Feel free to use the chat during that. It's really helpful. If Nikki says something, you're like, oh yeah, absolutely, I connect with that. Feel free to type it in the chat, especially when we're in full group time. If we do go into small groups, unmute there. And if you do have a question, we'd love for you to unmute and ask that question using your voice. I think it's important in this time where we're distancing to also hear people's voices through this. And then last two things, do your best to be present. It's so easy to check emails when we're on computers all day. You have like multiple tabs open, but we're here with an expert, so I'm excited to be present here with you all tonight. And lastly, because we're on Zoom and we're all at home and often have like family things happening, just go take care of what you need to take care of. If something happens, just throw your video off, come back when you can. Awesome. Tonight we're going to do, we just finished our quick welcome. I'm going to transition to Nikki in a few moments. Then we're going to do a Q&A. So save your questions and get ready to ask them. And then we'll have a quick closing at the end. The United Women's Ball Hockey Foundation is a nonprofit about 5 years old, and it's the first for women by women ball hockey nonprofit organization. And that's gotten me really excited because I came from ice hockey, Nikki came from field hockey, and like I would never have met someone as like her had we not been playing this sport. So what keeps me here is this community.
Forgot Nikki.
And the really wonderful group that is here. Our three core values are community, equity, and opportunity. And so we're really just excited to be here with you all in community tonight, getting this opportunity to learn. On the screen are the volunteer staff that serve on our UW's board. And I want to give a huge shout out to Jen and John Hines as well for helping to put together tonight's program and our community learning series, not just tonight, but beyond as well. So thank you both for all your work. Our goals tonight are to listen and learn, ask questions, and then we also, this is our first one, so we want to hear your feedback on future speakers, future topics, so keep that in mind as we go through our program tonight. All right, I have the privilege of announcing or handing off to Nikki. Nikki is an established personal trainer. Is an experienced strength and conditioning coach. She played college field hockey. She's an accomplished athlete and came to the sport of ball hockey, contributing greatly to all of the sport. I had the opportunity to play with Nikki in 2017 in the Czech Republic, and I can tell you that no one gets around Nikki. She's an absolutely incredible athlete. She has a wealth of knowledge around training. She's also really fantastic. She opened her own gym and also does massage there. And I can tell you she also has thumbs of steel. So just an all-around fabulous person. I think you're going to really enjoy listening to Nikki, and you're going to learn a lot tonight. So with that, I will turn myself on mute and turn it over to Nikki.
All right, guys, I'm just going to share the slides. If you guys already got these slides, feel free to keep them at your side too. You also should have gotten a link for like a quick little questionnaire. That questionnaire is for yourself and kind of for you to kind of take a look at where you are now and maybe give you some further direction on where everything starts for you. So if you want to take a look at that questionnaire, if you haven't already answered those questions, feel free to fill them out while we're chit-chatting. They should be relatively simple questions. If they aren't simple questions, hopefully they're going to kind of get you thinking about your lifestyle choices and where you are now, and see if there's certain things that we should be addressing before even worry about moving your body. So these little alien guys are like my favorite things in the world. If you know them, you too can experience the joy and love of these little guys. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have been watching and binging everything on Netflix. One of my clients recently told me that he officially finished Netflix. So good for him. But yeah, so now we're used to being in this closed off seated position. We're not used to moving as much. I mean, in New Jersey, at least where I am right now, besides personal training gyms aren't even open yet. So your options for what you could have been doing to stay in shape probably changed regardless of your work situation and your living situation. So what are we going to do to get there? So brief history on me, kind of pretty much got it. Today's not really about me, so don't really worry about it. But just so you know, I actually did do this in college, so I have some education. I'm not just some Joe Schmo on Instagram posted naked photos. That's not kind of how I do my thing, but for those of you who do, go get them, Tiger. Okay, so outline for today, this is our objectives. We're going to try to get through as much of this as possible in the time that we have. So if you haven't finished those questionnaires, make sure you're working on them now. There's just a few yes or no questions and then some A and B's. Get those done so we can take a look at that a little bit later. We're going to talk about what it is to be an athlete, specifically focus on what movements you should be paying attention to as a hockey player. The order at which you have to obtain this. So that's where people get a little bit screwed up, is they're not really sure how to start, how to finish, what's in the middle, how to progress from one thing to the next. So we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to talk a little bit about energy systems and why they're important for the exercises that you're choosing, specifically as you start getting closer and closer to quote unquote season, which is going to bring us to our seasons and how we should be working on transitioning our seasons and our training at the same time. 6, this is probably the most fun part. This is some movement patterns to incorporate. So that's going to be talking about some exercises that you should be incorporating into your week every single week. And if you're still sticking around and you're into the hippie stuff, chakras and weird stuff like that, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So my profession isn't just about movement. My profession is about more than just growth by body. So I'm going to share a little bit of that stuff with you, because unfortunately that is a huge part of being the best athlete that you can be. And I know it's weird and awkward sometimes to talk about those things, but you'd be surprised how much the emotional aspects of your life can affect the way that you play with anxiety on the field, stuff like that. So we're going to go over those things. Then hopefully we'll have some time for whatever questions you have. So these are my beautiful babies, and they're going to help us understand the importance of these things. So when we start training, when we move, we need to have joint flexibility, ligament and tendon strength. So these are the foundation points. So if your joints don't move, your ligaments are so tight and aren't hydrated, There's problem number one. So those are the things we're gonna address first. So I want you to think about your body like a building in California. So buildings in California are built on like a spring system. So whenever they have earthquakes, they kind of can move like this. You want to think about the base of that building being your ankle bone. If you don't have good mobility in your ankle, what's going to happen? Your body is going to just fall over, crash and die. So starting with flexibility, being able to have that movement through your body is really, really important. We typically skip that kind of phase of training. So if you can simply test, there's a couple tests that you can do to even see one, your ankles, which to me are one of the most important joints to pay attention to. That's your root. That's what connects you to the floor. If your ankle doesn't move, your knee's not going to move right, your hip's not going to move right, and it's just going to keep going up the chain. So focus big time on your ankle. When you sit down, you should be able to see your leg, your knee go over your toes with your heel still on the floor. If you can't do that, your number one priority right now is taking care of those ankles. Here's my super fat cat doing a sit-up or attempting, ironically with a nutrition book behind her, so it's even more fantastic. I love this picture. So when we talk about sit-ups, crunches, stuff like that, cool, yeah, it's gonna give you a six-pack, but is that really sport specific? Maybe not, I don't know. If you're a rower, you're doing crunches all day. If you're playing hockey, maybe not so much. So we wanna make sure that we're training our core to kind of recognize the sport that you're playing. All right, and then here's my dog. The next part of training is you gotta train the movement. You actually gotta work on the stuff you don't like doing, within reason. So my dog wanted to kill this squirrel so bad, but there's no way my dog is ever gonna learn to climb that tree. So you gotta remember, just because you saw something on YouTube, doesn't mean that that's something your body should be doing. So make sure that when you choose your training protocols, you stay in your box, you push the limits of your box, but you remember, the chances of you being able to walk on a stability ball while balancing a 45-pound plate over your head are probably not going to affect the way that you play hockey. It's a cool party trick. You might break your tailbone, but it's probably not going to have a lot of carryover in what's going on the court. Okay, so specifically for hockey, how are we moving? We need to accelerate. So accelerating is the ability to move forward as quickly as you can. The athletes who can do that in a second are the first ones to the ball. These are your intimidating players because they're going to be the ones who are controlling the game. Decelerating. So if you can get to the ball, but you can't slow down and break your feet down enough to control the ball, what do you do now? These are those kids you see running into the boards behind the net. They just don't know how to stop. That's something that they're going to want to probably put a little bit more emphasis in their training. Power production, linear and rotational. So when we say linear, we just mean something that's going either forward or back. Rotational meaning like this. So if you're really powerful at your first step, awesome. You need to be powerful in hockey for the entire length of a court, or at least your goalie stance, your goalie area. So if you are incapable of running a whole sprint and continuing to increase that speed, that's something we want to work on. Now, rotational power production, now we're talking about shooting. We're talking about ability to change direction. Believe it or not, you need to focus on your rotator stabilizing you as you change direction. So that's another point that we want to talk about. So our rotational power can come from either stability or movement. And our core needs to be conditioned enough to know when to do what and what to turn on and what to turn off to allow that to happen. It's like if you've ever watched somebody really old who's never golfed before try to golf, and the only thing you see move is their arms, versus somebody who's loose and limber, and when they go to golf, you see that whole follow through, you see the hips come through. If you are too loose, you're gonna throw your back out. If you're too tight, you get no power on the ball. So learning what muscles need to tighten, what ones need to loosen, and how to incorporate that motion is gonna really impact how your power production works in your shooting. Change in direction, pretty simple. Endurance for multiple shifts. So it's super awesome if you can go like balls to the wall for one shift, but then what? So you have to make sure that you're ready to do multiple shifts of that. Okay, so this is where we're gonna get a little bit more into some detail. So learning to breathe. This is technically phase one step one. And most people skip this, and that's no good. If you can't breathe, you're not going to catch your breath. You're not going to get the most out of your shot, out of your change in direction. If you've ever watched anybody who is good at karate, their breathing pattern also helps their force production. So you want to think about your lungs and your diaphragm as the center of your body. So if this can produce a contraction, I'm going to create a whole bunch of stability into my shot. Now, how can I do that while I'm still trying to rotate? So you need to get your force production, your contraction, to also work with your exhalation so that you have bracing, but still mobility. So learning how to breathe in these positions is super important. So step one for breathing. You can go ahead, put one hand on your stomach and then one hand on your chest. When you inhale, if you feel that the first thing that happens is your chest raises, you're breathing very heavy into your shoulders. You're wasting a lot of energy. When you inhale, you should feel your belly expand. Remember, your lungs are like balloons. When you inhale, you should be filling that balloon. So filling the balloon means you should actually be popping up. So a lot of people, when they inhale, they go like this. Their chest pops up and their center gets skinny and tiny. That's going to actually create a power confusion in your stomach. So now instead of actually filling, when you fill your lungs, it'll put pressure on your diaphragm, which will put pressure through your organs. Your pelvic floor is going to help brace to make sure your colon doesn't fall out of your butt. That's going to come up through, and that's what's going to make sure that everything stays where it's supposed to stay. If you can learn to do that, so inhale, exhale. At the end of that exhale, we're going to start talking about your belly button and your core. Your first level of your core is your TVA. So your transverse abdominis. So a lot of people, when I ask them to engage their core, they go like this and they bring everything down and in, which is great. That is a core contraction of your lower outer level. But it's really hard to breathe in this position, let alone rotate. So when we talk about core contraction here, we're talking about that lower, deeper level of muscle that a lot of people have a hard time turning on. And some of you may not even get this tonight, so you can try it. I'm going to demonstrate it, and then you can practice this literally anywhere. Practice it in bed. You can practice it. A lot of people find it easier to practice lying down on your stomach so you can feel the floor underneath you. But what you're going to do, so you'll put your finger in your belly button. So from this position, you want to see if you can inhale, exhale. At the end of that exhale, draw your belly button away from your finger. So don't just pull your finger out like this. You want to try to actually engage your stomach muscles away from here. That's how you're going to start training your TVA. So some people will do this first. And they'll get just that kind of part. You see how this is still sticking out? That's still technically my upper abs doing it. You want to pull from your deep lower ab area. It's going to feel deep, and it's going to feel all the way down through your pelvic floor. You'll feel this part flatten out too. So that's what you want to look at. Now, a lot of people, as soon as they do that too, they start to do this. You want to try to train that muscle still with good appropriate posture. In the beginning, you may not get any movement at all. Check to see if your belly button's rising up. If it's rising up, you know you're using your six-pack. Focus on just learning to do that. You're probably gonna have to hold your breath in the beginning. Hold it for 5 seconds, relax, until that gets stronger and stronger. So there's your TVA. So, okay, we're gonna talk about those questionnaires now. Number 2, nutrition and sleep, probably one of the most overlooked aspects of what we need to be doing. Try to get your 6 to 9 hours of sleep. You'd be surprised how much that helps you. Try to actually focus on the hydration. I'm not going to go into the food and the drinking thing too much. We don't have time for that. That's a whole nother topic. But it's hugely important. So, and the stress and anxiety part is hugely important. So the questions that I gave you, the first group, so that was answer yes or no, and group 1. So in your group 1, you want to try to make sure that you have more yeses than no in that category. So go ahead, count your yeses, count your nos. If you are not getting a lot of yeses in that category, try to focus on dialing in your nutrition. Maybe this is your time that you reach out to a nutritionist, or if you're really fancy, a dietitian, and start seeing what you can do to start cleaning up what's going in and out of your body. The second group now, you hopefully don't have a lot of no's. So if you have a lot of no's, I mean, you want to be answering no to a lot of these. If you're finding stress in these parts of your life, there's a really good chance that your stress is going to carry over into your training practices. So if you have a lot of situations there, maybe we got to talk about getting your head right, getting your brain right, making sure that you're not going into this with anxiety and stress to begin with, because that's going to tighten you up. As much as you pretend like it's not, it's going to force tensions in your body, specifically in your midsection, that aren't going to let you reach your potential. Okay. And now for the A and B questions. So this is a very, very brief breakdown of a book that I have shown later called Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. If you guys want to get more in detail into any of this stuff, this book goes further and further into this. This is just like the elevator speech on it all. So if you, with this A's and B's now, this is going to kind of start dialing in on your macronutrients, if you guys are familiar with macros, and it's going to give you a starting point for where you may want to place your percentages. So count up all your A's and all your B's. If your A's are 3 or more than your B's, so if your A's are 3 or more than your B's, there's a really good chance that you're a protein type. So that's meaning, if you want to take any notes on this, start your diet trying to hit 45% of your diet with protein, 35% with carb, 20% with fat. So if you're 3 or more in the A's, there's a good chance your body responds better to a higher protein diet. If your A's and B's are tied or within 2, you're considered a mixed type. So that's 40% protein, 50% carb, and 10% fat. Now, once again, this is just starting points. You're going to have to play. You're going to have to see what really works for you. But this can at least hopefully start sending you in the right direction. And then the last type, if your B's are 3 or more than your A's, you're a carb type. So these are the people who like get to eat the donuts and never put weight on. So you're going to get 70% of your carbs from donuts, 70% of your diet's coming from carbs, 20% is from protein, and 10% is from fat. So just some general starts. If you start actually a food log and tracking, you'll start being able to dial into what percentages make even more sense for you. But it's at least a good start to let you know how your body adapts. All right, so phase 2, mobility, stability, and anatomical adaptation. So mobility is pretty easy and simple to think about. You want joints to move better. It could be as simple as static stretching. It could be as advanced as you need some neuro reset work. So the first thing is, if you don't have any pain, but you have limited range of motion, it may be a situation in that your brain is just not used to that range of motion. So some PNF stretching or counter resistance stretching can sometimes be super helpful to just get you to kind of loosen up. So say I'm trying to twist and I can't twist any further. You have a friend, apply a little bit of pressure and then stretch the opposite direction. Apply a little pressure, stretch the opposite direction. Something like that may loosen you up enough. It could be as simple as your hamstrings are tight, laying flat on your back, leg's gonna go straight up, bend and straighten your leg, 10 times pulling your toe down at you. It could be as simple as that. Could be as much as, all right, you've been squatting for the last 20 years to 90 degrees with 100% of your body weight all the time. If you continue to only squat to that 90 degrees, that's what your body's going to recognize as your range of motion. Maybe take the weight down. Don't even put weight on your back. See if you can squat with your butt all the way to your heels. Work on increasing your range of motion. If there's a chance in your sport that you have to get into that position, you want to train a little bit past that. So if there's a chance that I'm going to have to go like this in my sport, I want to make sure I can get into this position. It could be as simple as I miss, I fall, I'm here. I don't want to have to do this to get up. I want to make sure that if I slip, I'm in this position. I can get my knee all the way to my chest in order to get out of that position. Anatomical adaptation. So this is kind of where we're going to start right now. So anatomical adaptation is giving your body time to learn the exercise. So if you haven't squatted in a while, your goal right now is to not put your max effort weight on the bar. Your goal is to find a nice comfy weight, enjoy it, feel comfortable in that. Maybe you're doing 3 sets at 10, not taking it to extreme loss. Let your body feel good. This is a great time to start putting a camera on yourself to pay attention to what your body actually looks like and slow it down. So if I'm squatting and my ankle's caving in on me, I can't tell that it's doing that until I'm looking at my video. So take your videos, see if that ankle's caving in. Maybe we have to work on some calf strength. Maybe we have to work on some bottom of the foot stuff. Maybe it's a hip issue. So start thinking about your training right now as a time to clean up the sloppy mess. You should not feel like you're dying super sore at the end of each workout right now, unless you've been training consistently right now and you're trying to transition to a higher one. But if you're coming off of doing nothing, I promise you, going in and going from 0 to 100, being super sore the next day, besides being something fun to say to your friends, is not going to be helpful to your training. If you're super sore the next day, guess what? Now you're not training that day, or not training to the potential that you should be. So you want to think about right now just trying to get your volume up, get comfortable back in your movements, move from there. So here we are at phase 3 now. So this is where most people start. Most people start with the hypertrophy phase, which just simply means putting muscle weight on. So this is people are like, oh, I'm going to do 15 sets of biceps till I can't feel my arms anymore. You just skipped 6 steps to go to your hypertrophy phase. So now your ligaments and tendons aren't up to par with your muscle strength. They take a little bit longer to catch up. Probably still have terrible range of motion. You haven't addressed any of the issues that are probably worse from sitting all the time. So remember, hypertrophy is fun and exciting because you can see results quickly, but be careful for what you're hypertrophying on. Your bones and your structure have not changed potentially at that point. Then max strength stuff, if you guys are training to the point where you're really looking to put 70%, 80%, 90% of weight on your bar, if that's the kind of training you're into, that's where you're going to start throwing that in. And then power adaptations is going to be your last step. So if you're cleaners, snatchers, jerkers, if you're into any of that kind of stuff, any of the jumping type exercises, that's your power adaptation. And then obviously if you're a badass, you try to make some life changes so that it's not like, oh, I'm going to do this really cool workout for 3 weeks and think I'm a badass and then go right back to the couch. So try to avoid that. Okay, so energy systems. So the percentages that you see there are estimates for what a typical hockey player, so this is ice hockey, unfortunately I can't find a lot of research on ball hockey, spend playing their game. So there's 3 basic energy systems. I'm not going to go over the Krebs cycle. There's no way I could recall that for you. So if you have questions on the Krebs cycle, do not ask me. So ATP. So this is your first burst of energy group. So when you're looking to clear the boards and get to a puck as quickly as you can, that's your 10-15 seconds quick burst energy. And then that kind of depletes, and then you have to start working into your lactic acid phases. So this is going to be the energy system that supplies energy for you for 40 to 60 seconds. If any of you are track runners and you're familiar with running like a 400 meter and that last sprint, how you feel like your butt is going to catch on fire, that's when your lactic phase is starting to run out and you're trying to flip to that aerobic phase. And your body's at a really, really hard time. So like that 60 seconds to 90 second time is usually when most people feel the worst because you're right in between energy systems. That being said, when coaches are yelling at you, 30-second shifts, that's for a reason. At around that 60-second mark is when you start getting lead ass. So get off the court and give your teammate who has some energy the opportunity to do what they're supposed to do. So try to avoid that in-between medium, I feel like crap phase as much as possible. I promise your coaches know exactly what they're talking about. There's literally science behind it, and it's right in front of your face. So make sure you pay attention to that. But you still need some aerobic background. So my people who are like, oh, I run 3 miles every single day, sometimes 6. I have never seen a court that big. If you are playing on one, let me know where it is. But I promise you that 3-mile run every now and again is going to have some awesome input, especially if you're starting to play tournaments where you're playing a couple games in a weekend. You're going to need some aerobic capacity, but it's a very different aerobic capacity. You're looking more so at being able to do 30 to 60 seconds of all-out effort multiple times. So maybe you're thinking a fartlek run is a better option for you. So think if you're going to go on a 30-minute run, maybe you're doing 2 minutes hard, 1 minute slow, 1 minute hard, 1 minute slow. That kind of training is going to be even more effective than just going on your 3-mile run. If your 3-mile run is your place to center yourself, that's your yoga, go for it. Absolutely. Make sure you're doing what makes you feel happy. Okay, so seasons of sport, you're kind of in this off-season, pre-season phase, and here's some things to kind of focus on. So off-season, you're training 3 to 6 times per week. If you are right now training 0 days per week, you're not going to the 6 days per week. You start at your 3 days per week, and then once you start building into it, you can start working towards your 6 days a week. And make sure some of that's actually hockey. So the gym is great, but it doesn't matter how much weight you can lift if you never pick up a stick. So make sure you're incorporating some of that hockey skill into what you're doing. One thing that we've definitely started incorporating here is if we're starting to do some heavier sets or some exercises that require 1 to 2 minutes in between, bring your stick downstairs and just fiddle around with your stick between your sets. So that way you're not wasting time, but it's not gonna affect my next clean. So if I'm hang clean in 145, and I have a 2-minute rest after that, and I'm just stick handling, I'm gonna be completely fine. I wouldn't stick handle right to the end because grip strength is still important for your lifts, but 1 minute of, try to stick handle for a minute. Your forearms are gonna be barking, you're gonna be sore anyway. So spend that 1 minute stick handling, the second minute kind of getting ready for your lift again. So it's a great, easy way to, if time is hard, kind of throw it all in there. So once again, we're working on that fitness base. Don't worry so much about the reps in the sets right now. Just get comfortable in that. Keep your workouts to 20 to 30 minutes. If you haven't done anything, there's no reason to be in the gym for 2 hours. If you're in the gym for 2 hours, you just don't want to see whoever's home. Aerobic endurance, this is where you can start playing with that 3-mile thing if you want. You're the furthest from the season, so if you really want to be a distance person, you can kind of throw it in there. You can throw it in your postseason too if you like it, but try not to do it too often. Okay, so that last thing on there says good time to play with eccentric loading. So eccentric loading is really hard on your nervous system. So this requires a little bit of time to recover from, but it's fantastic for teaching strength, keeping your reps down. So if I'm gonna squat, I'm gonna squat under a time. So if you have no weights at home, this is really great. Because this is how you can make 30 pounds feel like 100 pounds. So if I'm holding my weight at my chest, I could squat this for 7 days. But if I start having to squat this at a nice 5-second tempo, pause for a second at the bottom, and try to pop up, this has become a much more difficult exercise. So start playing with throwing in the eccentric phase of the exercise or the lengthening part of the exercise, making that a longer time. It'll make whatever weight you have at home feel a hell of a lot heavier. All right, so then preseason, some of you may be here if you're starting to actually play. Sounds like a lot of places are opening up. Now you're starting to get a little bit more hockey specific. See if you can start working on some rotating. Hockey should be coming into your day a little bit more often. Now incorporate the 30-30 training. So that means 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest, 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest. And then this is when we really should start working on trying to incorporate a little bit more power. So that's our sprints between 30 and 60 seconds. So see if you can start throwing some of that in. In season, postseason, there's some information on that. We're not really there, so we're not going to spend any time really talking about it. But for your future reference, there you go. 2 minutes? Okay. All right, so movement patterns. These, I'm sure you guys have done them all. Just make sure that you remind yourself that these are supposed to be incorporated every single week, hopefully even multiple times a week. And you can't just be a bi person. You can't be two-legged every single exercise. You want to make sure that you're also doing some unilateral stuff, so not just bilateral. So you're not just squatting and hip hinging with two legs. Try to do some single leg exercises, lunge, lateral lunge, single leg squat, alternating bicep press, triceps, alternating bench press. Make sure you're actually incorporating movements that are not just one at a time. So your hinging motions are your deadlifts, your squatting motions. You know, your squat push patterns are vertical and horizontal. So pushing could be a bench press, could be a push-up. Pull patterns could be here, could be a chin-up. If you have shoulder issues, if you can't stand up and put your arms straight up over your head, I would not recommend overhead pressing until you have that range of motion. So when you stand up, if your hips come forward like this instead of just staying directly underneath you, probably not a candidate for some overhead pressing just yet. Work on getting some range of motion in your shoulder. Core patterns and carries. So the antis, extension, rotation, lateral flexion, all hugely important if you guys are familiar with the exercise called the Palloff Press. He's huge. There's a million variations of it. Great for hockey players. If you don't know what a Palloff Press is, just Google it. A million options will come up and start incorporating this into your work. Just remember, Palloff pressing is about making sure that nothing moves. So you want to be as stable as possible in whatever range of motion the Palloff Press is putting you in. There's literally a million options. Just look them up, see which ones are interesting and fun for you. Assistance exercises, so your adduction, your abductions, like your little clammy stuff. Make sure you're still doing them if you have some uneven musculature through your glutes and whatever. Twisting patterns is your shooting, ball slamming type stuff, ball slamming against a wall. So make sure that you're incorporating that stuff too. All right, so the chakras and the hippie stuff. So there's the book that I was talking about. It's not an overly thick book. Here it is. Very simple. So this is not like a super scientific book. So if you don't want to talk about the levator scapula and all that kind of crap, this is the kind of book for you. So it's going to go over a bunch of stuff without going too deep into the science part of it. He's a little too wacky for me, but he's a great start. So chakras and hippies. So I'm going to talk about these zone exercises. So this guy has developed a group of exercises that are great for addressing these chakra issues. So those are the first group of things listed is where it physically is in your body. And if there's some sort of issue with that, those are the issues, the next group of things that you'll see. So the ones I'm going to show you right now are a zone 3 and a zone 4 exercise. And so a dynamic bird dog is as simple as this. So from here, you're going to touch your knee to your elbow and extend out. Once you get a flow, you start picking up that pace. You're going to inhale and exhale as follows. So once you come into here, you're exhaling hard. You exhale hard enough, you're going to feel your abs contract, and then you inhale. I guarantee you do 15 per side, you're already going to start sweating. The next one is a lateral ball roll. This is one of my favorite exercises if you don't have time to do anything. Your objective on this guy is to try and stay as square as possible. Don't hit the cat. All you need is a ball and a stick. You start here. You're going to roll out. Use the stick to help you pay attention to your shoulders. You're going to try to roll one shoulder off the ball without letting anything else dip and drop. Once you get comfortable, you move completely off the ball as fast as you can. Shimmy, shimmy. Try to keep everything as square as possible. So same thing. You do 3 to 5 each way. Defy gravity. You'll be sweating in no time. And they're gonna potentially wake up some things that you haven't been dealing with. You might get emotional and start crying, all that kind of stuff. But hey, that's cool. So yeah, so there's a little bit of stuff on the chakras. Once again, if you're into that, this book is a great way to get a quick guide into that. And that's it for me. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nikki. That was great. Would you mind taking the screen share off so we can see everyone's faces, and then we can have some questions? And for your question, feel free to just unmute and jump in. That'd be great.
Nikki, I have a question for you.
What's up, girl?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so something I struggle with is the nutrition part of it. And so like, you know, I love the workouts are great and stuff, but like what's kind of a simple lifestyle change? Like I know that I'm never going to be the person that is like calorie counting and doing every single meal, but like what are some of the simple things that we can be aware of in day-to-day life that's not going to crush our souls and take so much time, but like still will make a big difference because they're small?
Okay, so the number one thing that I would recommend for everybody is to meal prep on the weekend. Try to get as much meals made as humanly possible on Sunday so that you can have them for the week. So like a really easy thing to do is say you're a chicken eater, make like a pound of chicken and just season it slightly differently. So all at once you'll make these chickens and then just keep like, all right, this is my Italian, this is my spicy. And that way you feel like you're eating something different throughout the week, but you literally just mass produced the same thing and then eat that all week. So if you have a job and a life and you don't have time to cook, oh, tonight's shrimp, tomorrow's steak, the next night's salmon, which is not a reality for a lot of people, just mass produce it and have it already packaged so you can't cheat and eat 3 nights of meals in one night. That'll be super helpful. And based on that little chart that you had, so some simple things to think about is your plate too. So obviously your fat calories, if you're looking at oil, so like a little bit of oil like this is gonna have the same calories as a bunch of broccoli like this. So you can't just think like, oh, 35% of my plate should be broccoli. There's a really good chance that still half of your plate is gonna be broccoli. So if you think that your plate should have mostly green stuff and then a little bit of meat or your meat substitute if you're a vegetarian, you're in a good start. So just remember, or at least look into seeing how much portion sizes are very confusing to the weight that foods have. So like this much broccoli equals this many calories, this much steak equals this many calories. So you can't just look at it and be like, oh, 30% should be this. So kind of getting an understanding for that and then understand it, know that like this is a serving of chicken, this is a serving of broccoli, and having that in your head is, to me, really, really easy. And just know what they're supposed to look like going into it.
So Nikki, can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just gonna ask the question that maybe only I'm thinking about, but I think I actually have the hardest time with alcohol consumption as far as not drinking, or possibly if I have to have a drink or I'm in a social, situation where I'd like to have a drink. Is it true that like hard liquor is better as opposed to beer, or like what would be technically recommended if I had to?
Okay, so first, you can actually get tested to see what you're allergic to. So some people just honestly do better with certain alcohols. So a lot of people typically end up having issues with wine. So a lot of the sugars in wine, a lot of people have a hard time with. So, and you typically know, if you're the kind of person who, if you have wine and you have a pretty big hangover the next day and all you had was 1 or 2 glasses, there's a real good chance wine ain't your friend. Some of the vodkas and the tequilas that are out there are gluten-free if you have gluten-free type issues. If we want to talk about the calorie content of some of these alcohols, wine is pretty heavy. Your mixed drinks are super heavy. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm drinking vodka. It's only 70 calories a pop, but it's covered in Coke. So now you got to add your Coke calories in too. So you're still drinking the same amount of calories as a beer. MGD 64, 64 calories. That's less calories than some tequilas. So you can technically drink beer and consume less calories than somebody who's drinking a vodka Coke or a vodka Sprite, something like that. So you have to kind of think of the drink as a whole. A good trick, I'm scared to actually say that I use this trick, but I'm going to put it out there. Get cans whenever you're around people you shouldn't be drinking a lot with, because they'll never know how far you are in your drink. And you can just be like, oh no, I just got a new one. They'll never fucking know if that's your first drink, second drink, third drink, fourth drink, and it works like a charm. And before you know it, everybody else is sloshed and you're playing mom and nobody understands how you can take your alcohol that well. It's because you're on the same beer. Yep, that's how I survived college. What alcohol can I drink without feeling guilty? Probably water. But see, beer is healthy, and some beers are not created equal too. Some people, for some reason, have this thing against like Heinekens and stuff. Some of those beers have less calories than these sweet hoppy things. So just pay attention to. You can look up the calories in your beer and be aware. Some of the heavier beers actually have less calories than you think if you're a beer person. Holly knows. We all know bourbon is the number one choice for true champions. So if you want to play hockey well, you should probably drink some sort of bourbon or whiskey. It's going to put hair on your chest. But yes, so the main question is, this is like the number one question I always get is like, what should I have? Should I have the chocolate cake or the cheesecake? The answer is still neither. So you just have to decide what you like more and pay attention to your portion sizing. I'm not saying ever to give up drinking, especially at a tournament, because that would just be the worst time ever. But just be aware there's a big difference between a glass of wine and a bottle of wine, and that's what's going to make the difference between how you feel good and how you feel like crap. I'm told to only drink on the weekend. That's what I try to stick to, just because there's also a body fat percentage I like to maintain, and sleep patterns that get messed up when you drink too. So, I mean, there's been studies that show that if you have one drink on a Thursday, you can still be feeling the effects playing the sport on Saturday. So knowing those things kind of help keep me in check, that hydration is huge, and a part of it, kind of good to know. So
We have time for maybe one more question. Who's got one final question for Nikki?
I got a quick one.
What's up, girl? How you doing?
I don't know if my camera's working. Hi, guys.
Oh, there you are.
So what is the push that you said that we can Google? It sounded like you said towel
Okay.
push.
A Palloff Press. So it's Palloff.
Oh, okay.
So you're
Okay.
going to see about a bazillion different versions of it. Some of them are going to teach you how to prevent falling backwards. So you have movements that look like this. So you don't want to be able to be like this too far. You don't want to have to go like this. And you don't want to have to look. These are the ones that are going to teach you how to stabilize and feel your core through these motions. So let's pretend that this is a weight rack. This weight is coming off of here. If I'm standing here and pressing here, that band's going to want to pull me this way. I'm going to use my abs to stay here. This is your basic Palloff press. So I'm going to use so when I talk core too, now we're talking from here all the way to here, engaging to make sure that that band isn't sneaking away from me, and I'm going to sit straight out. If the weight's still coming from behind me, to practice not falling backwards here, you lock in this way, band goes up, band comes down, same thing. I try to prevent my hips from scooching forward. Some carries are good ways to work on anti-lateral rotation stuff. So walking around like this, making sure that that weight's not bringing you through here. So that's all of the anti-stuff in the core. But yeah, check out that Palloff press. There's versions from kneeling, seated, one-legged, two-legged, overhead, one-armed. So there's a bunch of different variations that are going to train you in different ways. And plus it makes it more fun to kind of mix it up. Bazillion options.
Is there any way to do
Thank
that at
you.
home, or do you need a weight rack?
You don't need a weight rack. You just need like a band and something to attach it to that's not going to pull, because you'll be surprised how much, especially like my hockey players are good at this because we do already rotate. So core stabilization is pretty good. You'll be surprised how much weight you can press with a band. You need a band. You don't, if you're just doing a dumbbell, it's a shoulder exercise. So you're going to need you're probably going to need a weight between like 20 and 40 pound for the band's weight. And as long as you have anything to anchor it to, you're going to be fine. Stairwell, something like that.
Nikki, I have a quick question. So fully divulging here, I can't touch my toes and I haven't ever been able to. I'm like the most unflexible person on the planet. Is there hope for someone like me? Like, can I still not being flexible? Like, what do you recommend?
So first I would say a little bit of an eval would be great too, because I know that you're flexible in other areas based on just the way that you play. So it sounds like there's probably some sort of neurological turnoff that's not letting you. So if you're trying to touch your toes and your back is tightening and you can't even get down without having to hunch forward, but when you're laying down, you can touch your toes. So if you can touch them in one position but not the other, that's typically a muscle issue and not a mobility issue. So a lot of that comes down to, all right, so what muscle is catching? What muscle is protecting me from reaching this range of motion? So sometimes it's going back and being like, oh, wow, I did throw my back out that one time. Maybe my QL and my psoas are fighting with each other. They're not letting me hinge forward. So this is gonna look ridiculous. This is a great starting point for you. It's hip mobility stuff. So you wanna be able to do, what a lot of people have a hard time understanding is pelvic tilt. So I need to be able to stick my ass out and I need to be able to curl my butt in. So if I can't even figure out how to move my butt in space, how am I gonna learn to hinge like this? So here I need to make sure my hips are hinging. Same thing, when I'm doing any sort of rotation, my hips need to be able to hinge. So now to work on this way, can I comfortably sit in this position? Can I comfortably rotate and get to the opposite side with my hips up? So address the hip joint and the hip socket stuff first and see if that alone makes it so you can do this. If not, this guy, where you're holding and relaxing for 10 seconds, try to squeeze this muscle so it hopefully relaxes what's going on back here. And then see if, I mean, you can do 10 of those and literally in less than a minute, you may see that your leg's all the way back here now. So same thing, just kind of play with the neurological response part of it.
Awesome. These are great questions. I'm going to turn it over to Jen to close us out.
All right, guys. Well, first, thank you everybody for joining us. Oh, okay. My screen went weird. Hold on. All right. Anyway, I don't know what happened. Oh. Oh. I see what's happening.
Yeah, I love you.
I'm gonna be all right. All right. First of all, thank you, Nikki, so much. Guys, let's try to remember that Nikki did this out of the goodness of her own heart. People pay money to get this type of information. That's literally how she makes a living. So I feel like really lucky that she agreed to do this for the UW's program. Super helpful. I feel like I took a lot of notes. Also, I wanted to let you guys know that we're hoping to have a couple events to continue this on. We're hoping that this doesn't end and we can keep connected as a community. So on September 23rd at 8 p.m., if you guys want to mark down your calendars, we're going to have Larissa Cernis, who is a clinical dietitian from Mary Medical Center in Chicago. And she's going to give us a whole nother session of what she has to offer, which will obviously be more of the dieting and all that good stuff. We're also hoping to have possibly in October to replace Oktoberfest will be Lindsay Machak. I know I'm destroying that. I'm sorry if I
know
am.
it's a new last name. It's okay.
I know.
You can
I
call
was
me
like,
Bit. I'm always going to be
all right,
Bit.
all right, good. Thank you. So we're going to have a trivia fest with Bit, who is the director of operations in our district trivia. She's going to do a trivia fest. It's going to be super exciting because Oktoberfest has been canceled. So please join us for that. And we like to stay connected. We're also looking to do team and personal challenges, such as like 2-minute challenges that we'll be able to do on Zoom. It's really exciting. We don't have a date for that yet, but we're definitely looking into doing some research to make this happen. I don't know about San or Karen's expectations, but I found this to be amazing. So personally, I hope that everybody can join us every time and also invite your friends, guys. Let's get some more people. Let's get our teams together. Let's show team pride by the more names that we have with our personal teams on it, you know, showing a little pride. So thank you for joining us, Karen.
Lastly, we'd really appreciate your feedback. And we have 2 different ways that you can provide feedback tonight. For those extroverts who love to talk, AKA Jen and friends, you can do a video response by going to this link here. San and Jay, can you please put that link into the chat? I don't know if you have access to this PowerPoint, but if you could do that kind of right after you sign off, that would be really helpful. Again, you're just responding to 3 questions. What's one takeaway? What further questions do you have? And what else would you like to learn? And any future speakers you might like to have. If you are more of the introvert type like me and you hate being on video, you can do this Google Forms survey. And I'll put both of those in the chat right now for you. But we really would appreciate your feedback on those. It's really important. This is our first one, so we want to hear from you all about how it went and how we can make these better in the future. It's a real privilege to be able to connect with everyone via Zoom, and it's really just a really cool experience that we can kind of all come together like this. So thank you very much. Let us know what questions you have. A huge thank you to Nikki, to Jen and John, and to everyone. We really appreciate you. And please fill out those one of the 2 surveys, and have a great evening.
Love and miss you all.